So I've been warning you guys about 2023. It could get scary. And especially even if there's a recession or not, if you lose your job, right, you're going to have a tough time. And unfortunately, Amazon is doing more job cuts. The now report is 18,000 jobs. Before we had heard 10,000, so this is actually increased than the original sort of rumors coming out. And Amazon is not alone. There's are several tech companies that have been essentially either freezing hiring or laying off workers. For example, today, Salesforce said they're going to cut 10% of their workforce. And that's why I've mentioned to you guys, make sure you have job skills that companies need and that you're essentially an essential worker. And if you're concerned about your job, just always reach out to your network and see, hey, what's going on in your industry, what's going on in your company, and just have a backup plan. Essentially, is what I'm saying. Another way you could say the phrase that people are using these days is career cushioning. The basic idea is that you just have somewhere to go in case you fall. That's essentially what it is, career cushioning. So keep that in mind. Governments are also going to be either fining or being more strict on regulations on companies. The basic gist of it is that they need money as well, right? So everyone's going to be looking around for money. And in this situation, Meta, right, which is Facebook, they're facing a $400 million fine in Europe. This one is an interesting one because it actually basically cuts at the core of Meta Facebook's business. So the idea is, do customers have to have privacy, right? So Meta would say, we can track whatever our customers do and know everything and what they're doing and kind of who they're interacting online and stuff like that and get all their preferences and then sell that data to, said advertisers. This is sort of how Meta makes money. But the EU is like kind of trying to enforce privacy laws. And then one of the issues is, can you force people to opt into your privacy policy? So if you're Meta and you say, you use my platform, I have access to all of your data, and different countries will have different regulations on that. So pay attention to this one, especially if you are a Twitter fanboy or fangirl, because this is sort of why you need different people on staff to make sure you're in compliance with multiple countries, as these type of companies are all over the world. And there are other regulation things as well. So you're going to have social media regulations probably changing around the world, as well as obviously crypto regulations, which we talked about in this channel. This was an interesting one. So Coinbase, they had some sort of settlement here. So you can see it's a $50 million in fines. This is to the U.S. regulators, and they're supposed to spend $50 million on anti-money laundering failures, is what they say, to make improvements on that. So one thing I've mentioned to you guys several times with crypto is there's a lot of dirty money in this stuff, and the regulators are going to really struggle because theoretically you could shut down all of these things. But I'll say, if there is big money in this thing that really wants to basically money launder and stuff like that, they could also pay off said regulators and keep the industry going. So I myself am not into this stuff, and I would steer clear of any of these kind of things. But that's just my opinion, and you guys can have your opinion on that stuff as well. But I'm not a crypto bull by any stretch. Also, too, the Fed. It's funny if you read the headlines here. It says Fed officials fretted that markets would misread rate slowdown. So the basic gist of it is that the Fed keeps telling people that they're hawkish and they're going to keep rates high for a long time. There's going to be a lot of pain. And sometimes the markets don't take them seriously, or sometimes people on TV say, don't believe the Fed, everything's going to go to the moon. And it's kind of a weird thing. And so when they release the minutes of the Fed, meaning that sort of like, what are the Fed saying behind closed doors, they're kind of concerned that what if the markets aren't taking us seriously enough? So the basic issue right now is the market's always trying to price in how many rate hikes the Fed is going to do, and the Fed keeps signaling that they're going to keep raising, and they're serious. And even if the rate hikes are slower, meaning that they do say a 50 basis point rate hike instead of a 75 basis point rate hike, doesn't mean that they're suddenly changing tune. Just means they're slowing down, but the tune is still the same. We're still raising rates. We're still concerned about inflation, and I wouldn't expect anything great out of the markets. That's just my opinion on this, but this is sort of the Fed is thinking as well, as like, markets be crazy because don't you guys hear what we're saying? Do we need to say it louder? That kind of stuff. In the world of crypto as well, FTX, the Sam Bankman-Fried dude, he pleaded not guilty. We reported this a couple days ago. It was like a rumor that he was going to plead not guilty. It ended up being true. That's why I didn't necessarily make a special video about it, because we already kind of knew this was coming. There was an interesting thing, though, with FTX. I guess the government was seizing, you guys can see this here, some Robinhood shares from FTX. It's like 460 million worth. And then the other issue, which I had heard as well, this is part of the article. It's not the headline, but it was part of it. Basically, Sam and his family receive a lot of angry, how can I say, we'll say people threatening them, right? I'm sure you know what this means, but I think these kind of people in any of this situation, be it like we saw my video the other day on Logan Paul, I just made that yesterday. You cheat people their money, people get mad, and I'm sure that many of the people who are involved in all this stuff are basically worried. I certainly would be, especially with a lot of this money. And you put this together with the Coinbase situation. Remember, there is a lot of dirty money in this kind of stuff. So do be careful out there if you're involved in this stuff. Now, going back to sort of the Fed sort of situation, the IMF was saying that we have not turned the corner on inflation. You read the headline here. It says, U.S. inflation has not turned the corner yet. Top IMF official warns. Funds second in command urges Fed to, quote, stay the course on rate rise this year. And so, all of these things put together, I am not a Super Bowl on the markets or anything like that, but I do like to hang out with you guys because it is true. It is totally true that, over time, markets do tend to go up. That part is true. And also, too, as well as, when you hit peak fear, maybe that's time to be buying, right? That kind of stuff. However, when people tell you guys that, no one knows anything, no one can predict the future at all, it's not entirely true because we've been correct on pretty much everything that we've been talking about. I've told you guys that, layoffs are coming, which we saw. I've mentioned you guys several times that FTX looks like a big Ponzi. We've talked about it several times in this channel. I was one of the only people mentioning it and warning people for months. And also, I've told you guys several times as well that the Fed is going to keep raising rates, and they seem to be serious on that. And I know the markets do crazy things, and even the Fed's like, whoa, what's the market doing? You guys are doing crazy things. But, it is what it is. Things don't always move in a straight line. So even though I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen in the future, I can't tell you exactly. I can't tell you exactly which date is the bottom, but it's not like we're completely blind, right? So this is sort of why we go through the news every day, just so you have a general sense of what's going on. Like, for example, we just did a video, and this is just a brief version of it, but if you want to see more details of it, but basically, we still don't have a Speaker of the House yet in Congress. I don't know what they're doing there. They don't know what they're doing either, and we'll see if they resolve that. So if you want more details, you can check out my video on that. Another one that as well, and this is kind of represents the whole economy and these of this nature. I guess U.S. auto sales are down, and I was looking at this. It's interesting because I know that how was I going to say that people out there who love Tesla and stuff like that, they just think Tesla's going to go to the moon and they're going to sell a bazillion cars, but going into recession, we can say the same things all the time. Interest rates are going up. People are losing their jobs. Do you really think people are going to go out and buy expensive cars? Now, whether or not the car industry completely implodes, right? I still think people need cars, right? They are going to drive places. And so if I had to bet, I would bet that, and I keep saying this on the channel, I think the Toyota Prius is going to be a pretty big seller. So we'll see. I do not work for Toyota by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, if I were to get one of these type of cars, I do like the Polestar. That one's a pretty good one. If you want to see my Polestar video, you can see that. Who else? I think Hyundai or Kia will probably come out with these kind of things. And eventually Honda, I think they teamed up with Sony, will eventually come out with the car as well. So there's going to be a lot of competition. Someone mentioned in the comments recently too that they're interested in Rivian after they said after their Tesla lease ends, they're going to pick up a Rivian. I've heard those are really good cars. The reviews on those are through the roof. So anyway, even though, yes, car sales may struggle, it's not like the industry will completely die. People still buy cars. It's the same with people will still buy iPhones, same way people will still buy, Microsoft, products, but things may slow, right? So instead of buying an iPhone every year, we might buy an iPhone every couple of years, right? So things may slow. And I know there's a lot of bad news in the world, but I do have a single piece of good news, which is really funny. The headline here is Danish bank workers celebrate, right? They're celebrating. We got to celebrate, guys, because this is the full year without bank robberies. It'd say robberies, but it is bank robbery. So true story. So I guess back in 2000, Denmark, they were having like a couple hundred bank robberies a year, and it's been in a slow decline. And eventually this year, there are no bank robberies in Denmark. So we have a time to celebrate. However, there is a little bit of fine print. There are no bank robberies in person, but people still do commit bank fraud and steal people, money from people online. So yes, there are no bank robberies in person, and yes, now the bank workers are safe, but you still get scammed out there. And do be careful, because true story, I've been getting these emails, and I'd be curious if you guys get these emails as well. They send it to your Gmail, and they'll say something like, you have a Bitcoin, mining thing, and if you don't, give us your password or whatever, you don't unlock it, you can't get your Bitcoin. And it's like, you look at the thing, it looks legit because it even is like coming from Google, like Google.com, and you're like, it looks pretty good, but they want you to click a link. So even if it looks like an official Google email, don't click on it. And the other thing too, which is a big giveaway on these kind of emails, is it says like dear love or dear something like that. Google doesn't really write like dear. So that is a tip. So there are no bank robberies in person, but there are still bank robberies online in that regard. So anyway, thanks again for watching, everyone, and this has been your daily news.